Feels
Hey,
like we've been off for a while now, but I know it's only been a couple of weeks. But oh man, it feels like it's been forever.
right? I'm like super jazzed about this episode. I was tweeting about it. I hope everybody knows. I really feel like I should probably like I have my I have a little system that's over here to the right, and there's a part of me that's like, oh, I 100% wanna retweet that and let everybody know that we're gonna be talking about Obi-Wan tonight.
I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Just getting all my post-it notes all situated, so my space is clear. Oh my gosh. All right. Oh my gosh, what a week. This has been a good week. But yeah, the last couple of days I've been thinking about this episode and thinking about like going through this particular topic. And we've had a lot to say about so just regular story stuff about Obi-Wan, some hot takes about Obi-Wan over the show's time. So I'm like, this is going to be interesting to talk through, like just a whole set of perspectives on who this character is, where he comes from, and we'll show it here in a minute. Like I don't know, I don't want to get into it too much until we start actually live. But
an interesting thing I think will be fun to talk about too is and you'll have to let me know, is my audio coming out okay? Because I don't know if I'm hearing a small echo. I'm even checking my mic on this side, making sure that I'm coming over okay.
It sounds okay. It sounds there's something different about it. I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what it's picking up your mic from though. Oh, is my mic not active?
Okay.
Hold on. Yep. Thanks, Rich. Rich is always looking out for us. I appreciate it, buddy. I had moved my mic connection and my camera connection to my work laptop for some stuff, and Ecamm doesn't like to switch back automatically, so it was still picking up my camera as my microphone. I'm like, what do you mean you can't hear me? Okay, that should be better now. Rich, is that better now? You let me know. No, you're good though. I can hear you. I can hear you totally clearly. I do wonder if, because you've got your AirPods on, I'm wondering if it's only picking up your AirPod audio as opposed to your actual microphone.
Oh, see, we're doing live tech here. So I've got my camera is activated and my mic, my regular mic is working. So hopefully everything's starting to come over okay.
Yeah, no, maybe I can hear you just fine. And Rich said,
perfect.
Sweet. Thanks. Rich.
Excellent.
Appreciate it, dude.
Good deal.
Yeah, this
Thanks.
is gonna be fun. There's just been a lot of we've talked about this Obi-Wan forever, and it's gonna be interesting to kind of get into it. And it's really funny because normally we would have some sort of other show review to do at this point, and we don't, because there's not been anything out for a while. I will say I did not watch the latest episode of Moon Knight last night, although the first episode last week completely blew my mind when Shannon and I watched it. I'm like, what are we watching?
I'm telling you, Jeff, I've got a good idea for some long form content here, because I feel like Disney is doing all the right moves that Star Trek is not doing. Because I watched Star Trek Picard, and I think I said the same thing, but I don't know if it was probably in the same way. I was like, what is going on here? What is happening here? And I don't think it's probably in the same way. So yeah.
Not great.
Yeah.
Not great.
No, it's not great. Like anytime I'm comparing something to Star Trek 5, that's never a good thing.
Ooh, yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Like I don't think any Star Wars fan ever watches something and a compliment is like, you know what this reminds me of? The Phantom Menace. This is great.
and in like the most positive sense. Like, wow, this is just like the Phantom Menace. It's like
exactly.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Phantom Menace. Like this
like
tone.
Ooh. It's kind of like the Phantom Menace. But yeah, I'm really excited about this topic, not the least of which is that I really also want to talk about the conceptual elements of Obi-Wan, kind of like the origin of the character, kind of what this character means, but also some of the things like the abandoned things of Obi-Wan. And speaking of the Phantom Menace, there was an entirely abandoned plot structure that they reworked for Qui-Gon to create the Qui-Gon character. And so, I'm like super excited to jump into this.
Yeah, totally. But before we do, I wanted to show a couple things real quick. I sent you a text about this the other day. I had no idea this was even a book that had been written at all.
Like I know.
An actual book. I was like, somebody posted on, I think, Twitter or TikTok about it. And I was like, wait, I'm sorry. is that an actual Dr. Aphra book? And they're like, oh yeah, it came out like a few weeks ago. I'm like, how the hell did I miss this? I instantly ordered it, and it's like, oh, you get this tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. I'm like, thank you. I appreciate that. So I'm reading another High Republic book, one of the young adult books right now. And this is like sitting here in my stack. Well, I got 3 other books in that stack because I was just like, why not order books? So it's Dr. Aphra. You'll recognize this one. I got Joseph Campbell's Hero with a Thousand Faces. And then this one I'm actually pretty stoked about too. Is it's a book called The Story of Owen. The author's name is E.K. Johnston. She actually wrote the Ahsoka book, the Ahsoka young adult book a few years ago. I didn't know that. And well, I knew she wrote that book, but I follow her on TikTok, and I commented on one of her videos recently about like, oh, I love the Ahsoka book. She said, oh, if you like Ahsoka and you want to read something non-Star Wars, this is the book you should get of mine. I'm like, okay. So I added it to the list, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and order it.
I'm telling you, Jeff, you're like, you're just like reading all of this great stuff. I feel like your comic pull request has moved right into like your nonfiction and fiction request.
This is the stat I have for my pull list, and I'm getting a little frustrated that I'm trying to catch up, and I'm like, all these books, I've got like these legit graphic novels that are just beautiful artwork on the front of them. I'm like, I don't know what this is, but it's gorgeous, and I'm like, I think where is it? I have a Jim Henson book.
Oh, man.
Where is it? Was it that one? No, it wasn't that one. Hold on. Which one was it?
Such a big Jim Henson fan.
So many books. Where is
it? I mean, seriously, Jeff, I know that we're going to be talking about Obi-Wan tonight. We're going to be kicking that conversation off here in the next minute. But I will say this, like, we could do an entire thing about the Jim Henson workshop. Oh, wow. That's great. That is really cool.
I saw it, beautiful, and it's like, it says Jim Henson's the storyteller, Shapeshifters, tale 1 of 4.
Right on.
I don't know what it is, but I saw that. I'm like, you know what? It's beautiful art, and it's Jim Henson, so...
We've talked about this in previous episodes. For anyone that isn't going to your local comic book shop, you know, everyone that's saying eat, sleep, read local. If you can go to your local comic book shop, it's amazing what you can. It's almost like window shopping when you're looking at some of the covers for the books and the comic books. I have picked up comics just because of the look, the art, the artwork. So yeah, I'm right there with you.
Yeah, totally. All right, shall we get started then?
Let's make a start.
Let's do this. That is dang it! I have got to fix iCloud. This is irritating. Every time. So anyone who's watching, this happens like every time we do a show that I forget that my iCloud syncs up or backs up files, and when it does that, it takes them actually off my computer. So when I go to run them as a scene in my software, you don't see them. I'm gonna fix this. Hold on, because I don't want that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. We'll give you a proper intro. Just give me a second. I can't believe I just did that. It's so bad. Hold on. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say one of the things that we're also working on to our regular viewers on the show is, and by the by, I apologize if my voice sounds particularly gravelly. I've switched to gargling with just whiskey. And
how is that going for you?
It's working. I told someone today it worked for Tom Waits. I gotta. As Jeff knows, we've been in a lot of meetings today, and oh, dude, and as passionate as we are about these subjects, we're just as passionate at work, and so that translates into me sounding like this. So I appreciate you sticking with me, everyone,
dude.
Thank you so much.
I have a compliment to give you. Then I think they actually wrote about you in. So the Star Wars Aftermath series that came out a few years ago, it's a trilogy. It's Aftermath, Life Debt, and Empire's End. In Life Debt, I'm re-listening to the series. Cobb Vanth is in the series. I never had any idea. Like, Cobb Vanth is in this series.
Oh yeah, that's right. And
there's a scene where he walks up to somebody, and the person describing how he talks says when he starts talking, it sounds like two boulders running into each other as they roll down a hill. I'm like, there you go. There's the description of your voice.
That's awesome.
Two boulders hitting each other as they roll down a hill.
This is like when I had grown a mustache and a beard. And
you're channeling Sam Elliott's voice there for a minute. That's
yes, exactly. This is like when my wife said, "Oh yeah, you you look like Obi-Wan Kenobi," and I was like, "And that now I can't shave it." So yeah, so yeah, if I'm sharing, Cobb Vanth, I'm there.
That's okay.
But yeah, I'm like super excited about this topic. I'm super excited about, we're doing a lot of work on the channel. We'll be talking about that, I think, probably at the end of today's show, Jeff, a little bit about some of the work that we're going to be doing. And of course, our upcoming episodes, in a few weeks here, we're going to be looking at the kickoff of the Obi-Wan series. Woo! And we're going to be coming in every single week. And we are going to be talking about it. We are going to be giving exactly. We're going to be giving our letter grades. We're going to be doing exactly like what we did with the Book of Boba Fett, and just gauging off of the first looks on this trailer. And we talked about this last week. I'm crazy excited about this. I can't wait for the end of May.
Yeah, it's going to be so exciting. We are still trying to figure out if we can do some sort of like release party, like watch party thing. I know Disney offers it, Disney Plus. So everyone watching, we are looking into how to do that to possibly share that experience with all of you. We'll keep you posted, but more updates at the end of the show. So for tonight, right there above Ryan's head, you can see it up in the corner. The title on YouTube, I made a little bit of some bait, some like clickbait, just because it sounded exciting. But we wanted to spend this time talking about who Obi-Wan is, but more importantly, his defining moments. Because I think everyone who's watching this, if you have heard of Star Wars in any way, you've heard of Obi-Wan. We've all heard of him. And no matter what level of kind of Star Wars geek or fan, what part of the fandom you're in, how you like to enjoy Star Wars, Obi-Wan in different ways. All of them are great. Yep. Like no matter to what degree you understand who this character is, all of that's fantastic. So what we wanted to do tonight is, rather than diving into all these sort of like turning the nerd knobs of all the places in Wikipedia you could find information about who new Obi-Wan is and grabbing books and stuff, we wanted to talk and focus on what we see as that character's defining moments in every piece of content that has been put out, or at least all the ones we can remember or that we think are interesting. So that's where we're going to spend our time tonight, on a handful of events or situations that just kind of to us define not just who Obi-Wan is overall, but who we kind of hope to see Obi-Wan will be and where he'll turn out at the end of this series coming in May.
Yeah, and I feel like Obi-Wan is one of these really great characters that, and I wish that it would have been a little bit more like this in the prequels. But if Luke Skywalker is the hero that you're following in the original trilogy, and from being a farm boy to being a Jedi, I feel like it's really Obi-Wan's story that we get to follow from the Phantom Menace all the way to the Revenge of the Sith. And I actually think it's a nice handoff that happens between Obi-Wan to Luke, that it stops being Obi-Wan's story and it starts being Luke's story at some point. And so I think Obi-Wan's actually a very explored character. And not many characters get as much time, get as much focus as Obi-Wan. From the beginnings, from learning, you get to see Obi-Wan with his mentor, to Obi-Wan's big decisions that he has to make towards the end of his life. So yeah, when we were going to jump into this, and I think everybody knows too how I think Obi-Wan actually starts out as a rather pure, innocent character and becomes a master manipulator by the time of Star Wars: A New Hope. But we can get into that.
But you just kind of dropped the hot take, let's just walk.
I'm just throwing that out there. But Jeff, I feel like because we wanted to look at this from a defining moment standpoint, I thought it'd be great to kind of hear from you about some of the moments that you felt were the most defining.
So the one I want to start with is kind of going back in the stories. For anyone who's read Master and Apprentice, which is the book with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, when they go on a mission, and hold on, wait, we got it. Hopefully this works this time. There it is. Put it up on the screen. Sorry, everyone. There's going to be spoilers tonight. There's a lot of books and comics and stuff. If you haven't read them all, you're probably going to be spoiled by some of this. I apologize. It's just going to be a thing. Sorry. So there's a book called Master and Apprentice, and in the premise of the book is we follow Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon on one of their missions. Seems pretty innocuous, but there's two things that are happening at the same time, and one of them is at the very near the very beginning of the book, Qui-Gon is actually offered a seat on the Jedi Council. That's a thing that most people hear, like, wait, what? Because in the Phantom Menace, Obi-Wan makes comments to him like, you'll never make the Jedi Council if you don't, conform to a particular way of behaving, Qui-Gon. And he says, I will do what I must, Obi-Wan. And in that book, so that's happened, and separately, but also conjoined with that, both Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon separately are sort of feeling like they don't really mesh with each other. They don't know how to talk to each other. They're not sure how to work with one another. They're feeling distant and separated, and it's creating angst and frustration between each of them because Qui-Gon is a very different type of Jedi than a lot of the ones that Obi-Wan is experiencing. And Obi-Wan specifically at that point in his life, he's a rule follower. He follows the rules. He follows the Jedi code. This is what the council says. This is what we do. And Qui-Gon he's never been that character. And even when we see him in the Phantom Menace, he's not that character. He does what he feels is the right thing to do in the moment, regardless of what the guidelines are. He doesn't deviate into the dark side, but he follows what he believes is the true path. And Obi-Wan is very much, but the book said this, but not to be too much of a smartass here, but like he's the Hermione Granger of Star Wars. Like he at that point in his life,
he's the brightest witch of his year.
Exactly. He's super talented. He's really powerful. He's an amazing pilot, and he loves to fly. At that point, he absolutely loves to fly. But all these things come together in this book, and to me, it's a defining point because a couple things happen at the end of the book. I won't spoil the story, but what the book essentially concludes with is Qui-Gon decides not to join the council. They decide to stay together as master and apprentice, and they choose it together. They actually talk to each other, and they choose it together. Obi-Wan realizes he absolutely hates flying. Not realizes, but something happens. He's like, I will never fly again. I hate this. So when you see him later in Revenge of the Sith and other places, like, oh, flying is for droids. You read this book and you learn why he ends up feeling that way. But to me, it's a defining moment for his character because you see it is literally the definition of pivot points for both him and Qui-Gon. Luckily, the pivots are toward each other, and they're away from things they were doing before. They don't leave themselves behind, but they realize they have to actually work together, and it's going to make sense for the two of them. And it ends really positively, but they have to go through a lot of struggle. And there's a great story that's involved and struggles that are involved in the story. It's a very meaningful story, but it's that pivot point, I think, at the end for both of them. You realize the type of person he actually is and realizing who his master is and becoming okay, or at least coming to terms with that's who his master is and how to work with him because they can finally talk about it with each other.
Yeah, I actually really like the dynamics between Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, and I enjoyed it even in The Phantom Menace. I remember when I read the concept for the original script, which was that there wasn't a Qui-Gon character, and that you were going to jump right into Obi-Wan. And there's actually a part of me that wishes they would have done that, because Obi-Wan is a little younger, a little bit more of a flawed character. And early on, when they were kind of conceiving the Obi-Wan character, they thought of him as who he is as an older person. And Alec Guinness, who of course plays, it's like who else is Obi-Wan? It's almost like Ian McClellan with Gandalf. Right. Who else can be Obi-Wan? And you think about how there's a certain dignity that Alec Guinness is bringing to the role, but there's also a certain playfulness. Like he's almost like a more serious, like Peter Sellers or something. Like I can't really put my finger on it, but he's a little bit of a scamp, and so he's almost a little dangerous. And I think they wanted to try to translate that in the early drafts of The Phantom Menace into that character. And then they realized that they wanted to kind of show that arc over time. They wanted to show the Obi-Wan growth. And so instead, they gave that scampish nature, that playful nature, that kind of roguish nature to an older character that might be influencing Obi-Wan. And that's where the idea of Qui-Gon comes from. I think I still would have liked to have seen a little bit more of a rebellious Obi-Wan. I always think about how the first thing Obi-Wan says in Phantom Menace is, "I've got a bad feeling about this," and I actually like that. I like this idea of someone who's like, looking for action, looking for an opportunity to take out his lightsaber and looking to get into trouble. And that's okay. I still think we get a little bit of that scampishness. You were right, Master. The negotiations were short. Um, but I actually would have liked a little bit more of that. But I can see why they kind of did what they did. They put all of those roguish elements more into the Qui-Gon character. So that way you could see how Obi-Wan is influenced, how Obi-Wan would grow up to be like Qui-Gon. And maybe even with some of the same strengths and flaws as Qui-Gon.
Interesting. It's interesting that you frame it that way, because it's almost like, because what we see later on is that as he grows up, he does kind of become somewhat more Qui-Gon like, but it's almost like he's fighting against, especially when you watch him in Attack of the Clones. I mean, okay, I'm gonna go to the rage desk for a second. It's just a hot take for a second. That mullet, that mane of hair that he had, and that horribly fake beard. I don't know if it's actually fake, but it looks like a completely fake beard. It does not look like Obi-Wan Kenobi's beard. It drove me bananas. But I let myself rethink those decisions a little bit, because in the context of what you just said, it would make a lot of sense to show a character like Obi-Wan, after losing his master, who was roguish and just skirted the line a lot, but not the line to the dark side, but the line to not following the rules. He followed the rules,
yes,
but he also was willing to step away from them when necessary, or when he felt necessary. And we see in Attack of the Clones, we see Obi-Wan basically torn. He's bifurcated between that who Qui-Gon was, and he trusted Qui-Gon, but between himself and the emotional complexities he has in dealing with Anakin, who's himself probably very much like Obi-Wan, because that's actually who Obi-Wan really is. And so even choices like his hairstyle and his beard, trying to make himself look older and appear older and carry himself in a different way. But I think we don't, even in real life, we don't realize that those are superficial things, and they feel, to us, they feel like they can mask those parts of our personality to other people. And even though somebody may not actively see it, our kids are a great example. I may put a mask in a certain way of calm and cool demeanor, but I'm an anxious person, and my son has become an anxious person as a result of that, because he's my son. There's nothing, I can put whatever mask on I want. It's not going to change the fact that I am still the person that I am. And I think very much the way they showed Obi-Wan in Attack of the Clones is a good example of seeing the bifurcation between those two different character types, that they were, to your point, they kind of came back around and were putting them together. But that doesn't really work, at least not in the way that you would hope it would work. And I don't mean that from the director perspective. I mean that people don't really work that way without a lot of manual effort to get themselves to that point. Because what we finally see in Revenge of the Sith is a bit more of that. We see him, and as he gets even into the Kenobi book that's on my shelf back here, we see him more closer to who Qui-Gon was, but he's still himself. He still makes decisions and thinks about things the way that Obi-Wan always does.
Yeah, and he's also adopted that Qui-Gon poncho look. But no, I actually like I said, I wish they would have done a little bit more of a rebellious Obi-Wan. I honestly wish Episode 1 would have. We've talked about this. Episode 1's problem is that it doesn't have a main character. And I think that main character very easily should have been Obi-Wan, because that's actually a really cool journey. You're watching a young person becoming a Jedi, and then without their master now having to protect and stand up for themselves. That's actually a really cool story. And that's also the arc of the prequels, is coming of age and making decisions when faced with challenges. Mm-hmm. And in that, you have parallel stories between Anakin and Obi-Wan, where Obi-Wan's trying to make the best decisions he can to be a person for others. And Anakin's trying to make the best decisions he can to control others, or the fate of others. and so they of course they were going to intersect eventually, in the most lightsaber clashing way. But yeah, I actually saw. I remember when the trailer came out for episode 2, and you saw the very Last Temptation of Christ Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I was like, oh wow, like they're really like doing it up, because they really made him look like Obi-Wan Kenobi. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, they made him look like Qui-Gon. Yeah. And so they really like had him grow out his long hair. They had him have a beard suddenly, and he's really trying to almost parrot lines from Qui-Gon. That whole setup, that when Anakin in episode 2 is chasing the Zam Wessel, and he's lost his lightsaber, and Obi-Wan catches it, grabs it, and gives it to him. He says, next time don't lose this, and this weapon is your life. That's actually a deleted scene that Qui-Gon has with Obi-Wan. That when Obi-Wan in episode 1 is running away after they've landed on Naboo, the question that naturally everybody has is, why isn't Obi-Wan igniting his lightsaber to defend himself? Why is he running to Qui-Gon? And it's because there's a deleted scene that you can see now, of course, which is Obi-Wan's lightsaber's been damaged because he's fallen in water. And Qui-Gon tells Obi-Wan, you need to be careful with this. This weapon is your life. And it's actually these really great sequences where, like most mentors to their mentees, coaches to players, and parents to children, Obi-Wan is trying to take the best of Qui-Gon to pass to Anakin. And that whole relationship of the mentors is played up when you see Count Dooku. And Count Dooku says, I was your master. Your master was my apprentice, just as you were to him. And so this whole storyline that's happening in the prequels is Obi-Wan's story of going, becoming an apprentice, succeeding to being, a mentor himself. And of course, as Yoda says, the failures that you learn as a mentor, that they grow beyond what you are. Mm-hmm. I love the prequel story when you put it like that. When you see that Obi-Wan is this main character who is learning some life lessons. Unfortunately, it's the galaxy that is paying the bills for those life lessons. And that's why you have him now in exile on Tatooine. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I'm sorry. I know that you have other defining moments that have really meant a lot to you as well.
I probably do, but let's go with you next. What's your next one?
I know this is going to sound funny, but I honestly, the very first defining moment that I thought, and this is going to sound strange because here we've started at the opening of Qui-Gon's story, when he is a young man or a boy becoming an apprentice. I actually, right when you said that this was going to be the theme, what is Obi-Wan's defining moments? All I thought of was that look and that smirk he gives to Luke when he raises up his lightsaber to be cut down by Darth Vader. Mm-hmm. That there are things in life that define you. There's things in life that define you, but sometimes there's the things that you define in life through choices of your own. And that is a conscious choice that Obi-Wan makes. There's things that, like, the Force is happening to Obi-Wan, or Obi-Wan's happening to the Force. Mm-hmm. Anakin is brought into Obi-Wan's life. The war is brought into Obi-Wan's life. He's got no choice but to face it. But in the last duel that he has with Vader, he chooses to be struck down and says, if you strike me down, I will be more powerful than you could possibly imagine. And I always took that as like, here's a guy who is sacrificing himself because he knows this is the best thing that I can do to preserve the future. And I always think about that from like the hero's sacrifice. And yeah, right when you said this was going to be the topic, the defining moment of Obi-Wan, or moments, I immediately jumped to that and thought, man, like, that is a choice that he's making to say, I am going to sacrifice myself. Luke, I will become this this caretaker in the Force, but this will give Luke a chance to escape. And what's the line from Kylo Ren? Let the past die, kill it. He's a part of the old that has to go away. And I think he's acknowledging that. And what's the old line about heroes? Heroes don't die; they just fade away. Isn't that what Obi-Wan does? So yeah, I love this that as a concept of a defining moment for Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Let me unmute myself there. I love that. It's because, like you said, it's kind of starting at the end, but it's not the end, because as we've learned about the Force, you know, there's the living Force and the cosmic Force. He becomes part of the living Force, and he's still able to communicate. And like, it's a foreshadowing for, you know, Vader, of course, to let him know that, like, it's not that he will literally become more powerful and gain more Force powers, which is probably what he's hoping Darth Vader at that moment thinks. He's tricking. He's manipulating, again, more people, as we've talked about. But he's manipulating Vader in that moment to hope, I believe, Vader's anger will win out and blind him from being able to see what Obi-Wan actually means, which is that his increase in power is that now he has a way to influence. Let's say influence for now. I'll say influence.
Yeah,
influence events through Luke and others, by being able to communicate with them through the Force and coming back as a Force ghost, and basically be able to have those conversations with them. And so I think it is, tactically speaking, it is a really good moment for Obi-Wan so we can see that he has, when he finally realized he had to play the long game, he has been playing the long game for a long time, and he's really been waiting. And when the moment came, that was like the right moment, he's like, okay, I know what I got to do next, and I'm not even going to hesitate with it. And he doesn't. He does exactly what needs to happen. And it's an interesting conclusion to the character, especially considering what we see at the very beginning of the Phantom Menace when we're first introduced to him as a character. And I won't get into it just yet, but it leads into the next moment that I was thinking of from one of the animated series. But I'll get back to that in a minute. But I really... Yeah, I'm trying to think how to express the emotion I'm feeling about that scene, because it's such an iconic and classic scene.
Yeah, and that smirk, man. Like when he kind of looks over at he looks and he sees Luke, and Luke has stopped. Like he's running and he's stopped because he's kind of shocked at this, and the lightsabers are crossed. And you've got to also think too, Obi-Wan's not lost on the Death Star. He seems to know exactly where he's going. and you know, I mean, the Death Star is huge. It's like, you know, 50 malls, maybe 100. And it's probably more. And so he's going, like, you know, from place to place. He's walking around in Jedi robes and nobody's stopping him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's because he's stealthily moving around, which is also a part of the characterization of Obi-Wan. I like that he's like, you know, your airbender. You know, he's trying to get around things. He's sneaky. And these are all things that play into his scampish nature. Again, Peter Sellers. But the thing that I really like about Obi-Wan in that moment is he's not lost. He knows where he's going. When he comes upon Vader, he's got the hood drawn. He's got his lightsaber ready. He knows what's about to happen. Yeah. And at that moment, it's all like playing time to get Luke to safety. And so for all of the bad things that I say about Obi-Wan, and I say a lot of them, that is actually a very heroic moment, because he knows that at this point, his quest in the immortal Lord of the Rings words, the quest will claim his life. And he's aware of that, and all he's trying to do is, what can I do to buy time to get them out of here and get to safety?
Yeah, I mean, it is almost the definition of courage, like doing something despite the fear that you may feel. He gets in that moment. He's like, I know exactly what's coming, and my this is the time. My time is over. My time in this crude matter is done, because this next thing has to happen. That this is my moment. This is what I'm here for. I mean, and it's one of the few times where we see that on screen, where we, like, when that happens, I feel pretty confident in saying that most people are pretty convinced that Obi-Wan knows exactly what he is doing. How often do we ever see that in a movie where we actually align ourselves with a character in that moment and go, oh man, are you sure that was the right choice? Oh God, is that really going to play out the way we think it is? I feel like everyone who watches that movie and sees that scene is like, that dude knew what he was doing. Like, he knew what else. Okay, what's coming next?
He closes his eyes and brings the lightsaber up to his, it's a very deliberate act.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by, as far as defining moments, again, there's things in life that happen to you and you've got to deal with them. And that happens a lot in Obi-Wan. I think you're probably going to reference some in the animated series as well. And in this instance, it's when you're exercising control over your life. And that's kind of what I liked about that scene, is Obi-Wan saying, I'm making this choice right now. And I'm not, and again, like, dude's not lost on the Death Star. He knows where he's going.
He knows exactly where he's going. So yeah, that leads me to the other moment that I wanted to state, which is relatively time-wise, it's relatively close, or it's closer to the one you just brought up than Phantom Menace Obi-Wan, but not, I mean, it's still pretty distant. Is in, I forget which season it is in I think maybe season 3 of Rebels. I don't remember exactly, where Maul and Obi-Wan confront each other, or rather, Maul confronts Obi-Wan when Obi-Wan basically saves the life of Ezra Bridger in the middle of the desert, sends him off on a creature, and they stand there and they confront each other. And ultimately, again, spoiler warning, Obi-Wan kills Maul. But it's, when I use the word kill, only in the most definitive, only in the most, like, clerical sense, not in the this is not murder. There's no emotion behind this. He is doing it because that's the only thing that can be done in the moment. But that's it. Like, there's no other reason for it than that. He would have avoided it had it been an option. But he acknowledges in the scene that it wasn't an option. Like, this was a conclusion to a story that needed to happen and had been needing to happen for a very long time. But Obi-Wan was going to avoid it because he had a role to play on Tatooine. And so I think in this episode, Luke is probably about the age, if not probably a little bit younger than the age we're going to see him, or around the age we're going to see him in the Kenobi series, I'm guessing, give or take. He's got all white hair in this, so maybe a little bit older, but when we see Luke running at one point across the sands and Obi-Wan staring at him from a distance, he's pretty small. He's pretty young. So I would say it's within the time period that we're going to see probably in the Kenobi series. But it's fascinating to me because in the moment, they did a number of things really well. One, they very clearly modeled the character and the artwork off of Alec Guinness. So he had a much more what am I trying to think? A relational look and feel for most of us who has seen the originals from a young age would see, oh, it's Alec Guinness. But also there were facial features and beard and things like that very much were like what Obi-Wan looked like in the Clone Wars too. So they did a good job of blending the two. And the way they did the voiceover work, you very much can hear the sort of accent of Alec Guinness, that classic English accent, with how Obi-Wan talks or how Ewan McGregor talks. There's a good blending of the two together, which really is nice because it makes you feel like you're actually watching like a good mix of these two different types of characters at different points in their lives. But the way that he handles Maul is he's resigned to what is going to have to happen. And you see him Obi-Wan go through a couple different poses preparing for the fight while they use words to fight for a couple of minutes. And then Maul approaches the attack like he's been thinking about forever, that he's going to do the same thing he did with Qui-Gon, and approaches the fight the same way. And Obi-Wan knows that that's what's coming and defends in the most appropriate way. And what I've never been able to tell from watching the animated is, did Obi-Wan just cut his saber in half and Maul's body was fine and it's like, I'm done? Or did he actually cut Maul? Because I can't really tell when I watch the show, like if there's he clearly cut him and he's done, or if Maul finally was just like realized that his conclusion was there and his body was like, dude, that's it. That's all you need. Because in that final moment, the thing I love about him not actually cutting him, just cutting the lightsaber, and Maul, like, you see him stand there for a minute and his eyes kind of go out of focus and then refocus, but when they do, they change
Yeah.
into a less focused, like it's almost like they're no longer focusing on this singular goal, and they're kind of
Yeah.
eyes wide open to, oh, now I see. And when he falls down and Obi-Wan cradles him, it's, you can tell that Obi-Wan is finally at a point of, he is not, there's no anger anymore. There's no emotion. There's no hatred. There's nothing about that. He did what he had to do, but that's literally, he did it only because there was no other way for him to get out of that situation. And it's so fascinating as I say this out loud, thinking about it, that that's basically the culmination of what Jedi always want, which is to avoid the fight at all costs. And even if you go into the fight, there shouldn't be emotion in the fight. It's like you're doing this to complete it and get out of it. You're not doing this because you want to be there. And the moment when he defeats Maul and Maul is dying and Obi-Wan is cradling him, you can tell that Obi-Wan has changed. His character has changed. When he fought Maul the last few times, he was very angry and used the Force in ways he would never use it.
Oh
When
yeah,
he fought
he's like jumping around before the laser gates open up, and he's like, yeah,
Exactly.
let's do this.
Or like in the Clone Wars when he encountered Maul and what was his brother's name?
Savage
Opress.
Opress.
When he fought them a couple of times when he had no other option, him and Asajj fought them a couple of times, and he like went all out and used powers that he doesn't typically tap into. This is not that Obi-Wan. Like, this is a very different person, character, set of emotions, everything. And I think, to me, that is, if I'm to point out, if I was to pick a single instance of any time we ever see Obi-Wan that is like, that's Obi-Wan right there, to me, that is the scene. Like, of all these others, they're really well, they describe who this character is, but that moment with Maul is like, you can see everything about who this character was and is going to be in that one moment.
Yeah, there's a really old movie called the old movie. It's not like, Casablanca old, but it's a movie called the Duelists, and it's I think it's Ridley Scott's first movie. And it's like a crazy movie. Harvey Keitel is in it, and it's a movie about two soldiers who are kind of cycling around each other in this forever duel. Like, it's set, I believe, in the 19th century, I believe, and they're always in the end, what they have with each other is the duel. And this is also a concept that you see in a lot of things. Luc Besson has this in a movie called The Big Blue, which is about two divers. One of them played by Jean Reno, and that in the end, all they have is the fight. If Rich is still on, this is also what Riker's got with his father in The Next Generation. The what is it? Obo Jitsu challenge. That in the end, sometimes all you have is the fight, and that's all that Obi-Wan and Maul have at the end in this odd, very personal yet very impersonal relationship is just the duel. And so when it's over, I think there's two sides to that, which is, I know it's gonna sound really weird because I keep bringing up other movies. Have you ever watched Heat with Al Pacino and Robert De Niro? Oh, and I believe you might be on mute.
Sorry. Yes, I was on mute. I was typing something real quick.
No worries.
I have seen parts of the movie, but I've never watched the entire thing.
So you should watch the ending of Heat. Like, spoil the movie for yourself. It's an amazing movie. If you liked The Dark Knight is like a play on Heat. And it is an amazing movie, but its ending is like, it's like everything. It's like catharsis. It's all of these things. And in the end, when it's Obi-Wan and Maul in the scene that you're describing, and Maul is he's not vanquished, he's like put out of his misery.
Yes.
uh
Yes. Thank you.
uh
That's a great way to put it.
it's an amazing, it's this catharsis, it's the ending, it's all of these things that happen in that moment. And so then, instead of even mourning the mourning Maul's death, Obi-Wan is cradling him, and it's almost like all that we, it's what is it, it's like a trope, it's like we could, in another life we could have been friends. Here they have this incredibly personal relationship, right? Maul has killed Obi-Wan's master. Obi-Wan has mutilated Darth Maul. Like, it's this crazy weird thing that they have. And so, and I'm not trying to make this bigger than it is. Like, it's like two people that have hurt each other for decades, and then all they have is this. And so when it's over, it's almost like they kind of like know each other and don't know each other. And yeah, like, I really like that sequence. I know the sequence that you're talking about. I love the animation style. I love the thin lightsabers and everything. I'd recommend that scene to anyone. I'd also recommend, if that scene is something that people on this call can remember, I'd also recommend, and you like that scene because of how it made you feel, I would recommend watching The Duelist, watching Big Blue, definitely watching Heat. Oh my gosh, watch Heat right now. And I'm not saying you need to leave this
don't
channel.
Leave the Kessel chat. Just
stay on the channel. Then right after this, go and watch Heat. And yeah, like, Al Pacino's crazy. You're getting the full Pacino. You know, he's at that, hoo-ah stage of his career. But it is probably some of the best work of any of the actors that's in there. Val Kilmer, it's easily Val Kilmer's best movie, and he's in it just for moments. There are so many really great scenes in that. But again, the scene with Maul and Obi-Wan is almost a take on the ending scene of Heat. And that might be a spoiler. I don't care. It will still hit home. So yeah, I love that you're bringing this scene up, because that was also something that I was going to bring up. And again, we've talked about this, Jeff, and I'm sorry, I will stop talking here in a minute, because I'll throw it back over to you.
No, you're good.
The biggest flaw in the prequels, and I will quote Belated Media on this one, is how they use Maul. For all of the reasons that we just talked about, here you've got this incredibly impersonal, personal relationship. Maul should have been the continuing threat all the way through to Revenge of the Sith. And then Obi-Wan has the same moment, but as a younger man with Maul. And why is that so important? Because it will be the reverse thing that happens with Anakin. And just like with Maul coming back with a half robot body, that would have also been symbolic for what ultimately happens to Anakin. That Anakin's got like a whole robot body now. And that I think that is the flaw, because the thing that's happening between Maul and Obi-Wan is really interesting. And I think that every time you have a protagonist and an antagonist meet, it should get more personal. It should get more dangerous. It should get closer. And that would have made it closer. And even more so, Obi-Wan would have learned more in the intervening time between that and Darth Maul, instead of, oh yeah, it's just a dark Jedi that I killed. And it's Darth, this guy Darth Maul. It would have been better, because it would have built on the relationship every single time, and it would have been more furious, would have been very personal.
I agree. I actually, that scene in the Rebels, I think, to me, that and to add on to what you just said, this is not an addendum. This is just an addendum to what you just said. Is that the relationship there to me, and I think it's an easy argument to make, that it is a more impactful and interesting antagonist protagonist sort of dynamic and evolution of two characters than Obi-Wan and Anakin, and how the Duel of the Fates completed and winded up. Because as much as people love that, the fall of Anakin and all that, like we saw it coming the entire time. That's the thing, is you see it coming the whole time. Like, no one's caught unawares that he falls to the dark side. Like, yes, we go into the series knowing that that's exactly what's going to happen to the guy. How it happens, we don't know, but we watch it, so it's so evident. And even when it does happen, the very end, when he, like, the quintessential liar, and he yells, you see the yellow in his eyes. He's overtaken by everything. Like, he is all consumed by something and doesn't realize if he had just calmed down for a minute, probably would have, like, washed over him and he could have moved on, but he doesn't. He lets it all consume him, and it all consumes him, and he has no control over what's happening anymore. Whereas with Maul, it's a very different thing, because Maul has 100% embraced it, and he is not consumed by it in the way that, and by this I mean the dark side and his emotions. He is not consumed by it in the way that Anakin is. He is not consumed by it at all. It drives him. And he understands that is, and he has accepted that. So it makes them almost synonyms to each other. It makes them almost the same thing, but on the other, like, it basically makes them like the human version of yin and yang, almost, because each of them at that point, when they finally that final conflict, they have each completely embraced exactly who they are and what needs to be done for them at that point in their lives, and that point in the story, the character's evolution. I think I find that so much more interesting and heartfelt and meaningful than what happens with Obi-Wan and Anakin. I do.
Yeah, I mean, again, like, I know this is going to sound funny, but sword fights in movies, although spectacular, are really there to put your two opposing characters right in front of each other. And in Phantom Menace, they don't talk to each other, which is something I think is a problem. And because again, it's like you got these two characters right in front of each other. And of course, I already have an issue with the fact that I wish that Maul, and by the way, this is becoming Darth Maul's defining moment.
I mean,
but I would have, yeah.
It sort of makes sense. Again, I think we can easily remove his name up there and say that too, like Obi-Wan, like Obi-Wan and Darth Maul, because honestly, they kind of go hand in hand with each other, much more so, I think, than him and Anakin. Because
one of them dies out of seeking revenge, and the other one dies as a sacrifice. It's a really, like, interesting dichotomy between these two, and they're both apprentices. This is where I feel like the biggest missed opportunity in all of the storytelling is how Maul is dealt with. And by the way, when I first saw Darth Maul, and when I first saw Obi-Wan, I remember thinking, whoa, the guy from Train Spotting is going to be Obi-Wan, dang. And then when I saw Obi-Wan, Darth Maul, I was like, it's like we're really going to the devil stuff. Okay. Yeah. This is a little too on the nose. But I ultimately ended up really liking that type of characterization. The thing that I felt like was, again, missing was Darth Maul, and I feel like this would have also resonated more with Revenge of the Sith. That if you're gonna say your third movie is Revenge of the Sith, actually show the revenging. I think what would have been great to see would have been that complicated relationship between two apprentices growing up. I know that does upend a little bit of some stories that happen in the Clone Wars and everything else. I love what Dave Filoni did in the Clone Wars, all that stuff. I'm just saying there is in my multiverse, there is a multiverse where Obi-Wan and Anakin have some pretty intense conversations in that fight while they're in the palace at Theed in episode 1. And then in episode 2, it is Dooku is actually this guy who is right, and he's saying, no, they've been taken over by the Sith, and maybe instead of Dooku, being the traitor, Maul appeared. And in fact, I remember walking into episode 2 and almost having a thought that that's what was going to happen, and that Dooku would die, and that Obi-Wan has lost yet another link to his past, knowing that Dooku had been Qui-Gon's mentor, and that the secret hand behind all of these things, if Maul appeared again in episode 2, that would mean so much to Obi-Wan, especially if Dooku was to also die. It doesn't have to be by Maul's hand, but again, it makes Obi-Wan that much more alone, which then translates into him being very alone in A New Hope, where he's literally in exile. Again, I think that this is all there in the character. We're just missing those scenes.
Yeah. Just how Michael just said, like, you're just gonna walk in, Michael, and drop that, and then just like, I'm out, done.
By the way, I also saw Rich's comment about how they are both true, depending on your availability point of view. Yeah, agreed. Like, Obi-Wan was in the multiverse before anybody else. Obi-Wan was an objectionist. What is that? I'm forgetting the type of view that is, but it's like basically or I don't know, a nihilist or something. Obi-Wan believes in nothing, Lebowski.
He's nihilist. Yes.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, I mean, it's true or it's not. I don't care. You have a sister, or maybe you don't. He's your father, and he killed your father. It's all the same thing. I feel like the Obi-Wan that we meet in Return of the Jedi is walking out of some type of, like, Truffaut movie or something. It's like, it's all the same. It's all the same.
He just finished filming part of a second release of Fear and Loathing Las Vegas, and he's just like coming off of the high of being in a hotel room filled with water and pure adrenochrome, and he's like, wait, where am I? What's happening now?
Oh, I mean, again, like, it makes no sense. If someone you trusted told you lies all of your life, and then when you confronted them and then they said, I didn't tell you lies, I mean, they're pretty much true from the way I see it. It's like, is it?
Is it? Were you high the whole time? Because
no, I mean, the guy's like, I mean, again, you would not trust that person. You'd be like, I don't know how much I can trust you. I actually wish we saw that reckoning between Luke and Obi-Wan, but it's cool. Like, I guess it all worked out in the end, and I guess that's Luke's point too. Like, I guess it all worked out. But yeah, like, it's a really interesting thing of who Obi-Wan becomes because of that, because of all these things that have happened to him, that he's willing to be like, yeah, I've got to manipulate this kid to go and kill his dad, because that's the only way to go and save the galaxy.
He's almost like at that point in his life where he's like, I have made it this far, like, I can't turn back now. Like, I can't not do this now, because I've been doing this for so long now. Who would I be if I just stopped here and went, I think it's a little messed up that he didn't just at any point like rethink and go, well, maybe this isn't the right approach. Maybe there's an alternate way to do this. But he doesn't. He just goes, he continues on with it. And he's still, like you've said before, he still continues to manipulate Luke, even once he's a Force ghost. Well, I told you things, even from a certain point of view. It's like, dude, come on.
And Jeff,
let it go, man.
You're describing something that some people might call revenge. I mean,
revenge
it's a really
is not the Jedi way.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really interesting. I mean, again, he's single-minded. He's Charles Bronson from Death Wish.
Oh my
it's a really interesting breakdown of kind of that character, and maybe that there's something to that how much trauma can one person take before they're like, man, I mean, is this the greater good that Obi-Wan is working on? I'd like to think so. Or is it personal?
Mm-hmm.
The Empire has already won. You are our only hope. Dang. That's a heck of a line.
Yeah. If that was from any other sort of, like, not rom-com, but any other type of movie from the 90s and 2000s, the person listening would go, oh my God, blow it out your
Yeah, right,
Like you
right.
are an a-hole. What are you
Yeah,
doing? How
yeah.
could you talk to me like that? But in this, Luke's just like, wait, what? He's like, I'm just saying, man, you were our hope, and I just don't know what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna go over here and have some coffee because, like, it's like, dude, you just, yeah. Sorry,
Yeah,
everyone.
it's
There's one of the hot takes that Ryan brought up a long time ago, and it's a
oh
running
yeah, and
theme for
I'm
us.
sorry.
The dude is a gaslighter. He is. He's a
But
manipulator.
I think he's like, you need someone like that in the plot sometimes,
Oh, you
because you know who's also kind of like that, but he's not as big of a liar, is Gandalf. The biggest of the there's characters, there's always an Obi-Wan character that's out there, or a Gandalf character, or a there's there a Gurney character,
Dumbledore.
you know. Yeah, I was about to say Dumbledore. Dumbledore's the worst of them because
worst.
Dumbledore is raising Harry
To die.
to kill him at the right time.
Yeah.
Spoilers for Harry Potter. The yeah, the Gandalf character though is very similar. The richest comment here. The Gandalf character is very similar in Lord of the Rings, except he's really not. He's more pushing people. Like he's pushing Aragorn into kind of like, hey, you gotta be the king now. He's pushing Frodo into going on this quest. He's outright lying to the dwarves about Bilbo's ability to be a burglar. But in all of these things, it's almost like he's kind of like pushing them along, kind of giving them the encouragement. It's like a light manipulation. He's not telling Bilbo that he doesn't have a sister.
He's not. He never outright lies to any of them. And one of the things he does very well throughout the stories is that he Rich, Rich, it's fly, you fools. I mean, come on, man. I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. I joke. I'm sorry. No, he does a good job of putting people in situations and he hopes that the situation turns out the way he's hoping it will. Like he's like, I put Bilbo in this situation hoping that all of my time watching The Hobbit would turn out the way that I'm hoping it will for the 4 steps that are coming down the line. But he doesn't actually know. He's guessing at best. He has knowledge, but he is guessing at best. And like, I hope this plays out the way that we need it to play out for this thing to happen. Because if that thing happens this way, then these 3 other things can happen and we'll be in good shape. But there's plenty of things that happen that he has no expectation of. Bilbo finding the ring is a clear example. He couldn't have even fathomed that Bilbo would find the one ring under the Misty Mountains. Like, there's no way he could have thought of that. He had no idea. And when he finally learns it, it throws him off. Like, he's like, oh, okay, whoa, hold on, So I'm with you. Like, he does do manipulations, but they're much more of like, to your point, he nudges, but he nudges them in a place where he's like, I'm going to nudge you alongside somebody else because I think if I put the 2 of you together or you in this group together, these things might happen that will benefit a wider group of people. And he does talk in riddle, but I think he talks in riddle and all that because he actually, unlike Obi-Wan, or even Dumbledore for that matter, Gandalf actually has a lot more knowledge and forethought because of who he is. He is a Maiar. He is basically like a demigod. And so there's a lot more going on up there than the old man that we see on the outside and inside that we see down that he has on the line. The others, like Dumbledore at best had not just his hopes, but this is what I want this to play out.
Yeah.
He was only ever, this is how I want it to play out. Because even in one of the scenes where you see in a memory that Snape gives to Harry about his mom and when he dies and watching them off to the boy and all that, he's like, how could you you can't save them? And he's trying to begging and pleading Dumbledore. And he's like, what will you give me? He's like, what are you going to do for me if I do all that? It's like, dude, like anybody else would like, how can I've got to figure out a way to do this that saves people's lives, all that. But in that, he's very much resigned to, this is the way it's going to play out. And I'm just going to let that happen because that's all it could be, right? And I'm just going to keep running off of that. He doesn't actually have any forethought or like down the road side of what's really going to happen. He really doesn't. He's just hoping and prayer that this is going to play out. And to a degree, Obi-Wan is that way. He's not, to your point, he's not nearly as vengeful and vindictive
Yeah,
and
he's not.
manipulative as
Yeah.
Dumbledore is. But he's not that far off. Like, he does, you said he's single-minded and he has a thought, but he also really does believe that, and honestly, the thing he's going for is the thing that everybody really wants. So he's not like completely the bad guy, but his methods are very manipulative when he goes about them.
He's a negotiator.
Right.
So yeah, like I think a lot about Obi-Wan, and I think of the the real strength of a negotiator, which of course is what General Grievous calls him. You know, as everyone I think knows on the show, and one of the reasons why Jeff and I have talked about that, the negotiator, that what the great strengths of a negotiator is someone who can drive compromise, and sometimes compromise is kind of the subtle arts of language, the ability to kind of reel someone in maybe sometimes not to their best interests, but to the better interests of a lot of other people. And I think about how Obi-Wan is this great negotiator. He's even negotiating with Yoda when Yoda's like, I can't train him. He's like, was I any different? You know, it's like he is this constant negotiator. He's constantly trying to push people along, negotiating either with Anakin, with Padme, with Luke, with Yoda, even trying to show Luke that if he was to leave Dagobah before his training was complete, if you face Vader, I can't help you. If you choose to do this, I can't help you. These are all really important things that really reflect who he is as a character, which is he's a talker. He talks. He understands how to use language to be able to get the things that he wants out of people, and so that's very Gandalf-esque, and I think that that's where almost all of that character comes from. And I will say that Gandalf, like Obi-Wan, like Gandalf, even like Dumbledore, these are characters, you know. Obi-Wan's dead at the end of Star Wars, and that was the intention. He's dead now. The original script was Obi-Wan survives, and nope, Alec Guinness wants out of this movie. He's dead. And one of the things people always talk about, oh, I wish when they made these movies that they had all the story beats lined up. They don't have things like that in movies that we all love, like Empire Strikes Back. That yeah, some of the high arc story beats were there, but not all of them, and not things like Yoda or anything else. Those came out of very creative ideas and decisions. And so I think some of the things that Obi-Wan does in the original series, those are all because of the fact that they're kind of like, we got to keep building on this character. We got to keep adding that complexity. And so that's why some of those things kind of do seem a little strange. But I'm glad that we've got the prequels and all these other things that have come in. And of course, the Obi-Wan series is coming up, because that character's complexities are so vast. It's great to be able to sit with them and kind of learn more about why is this character the way that they are.
Yep. I totally agree. I totally agree. Well, listen, we are at time.
Yes.
And we got a couple quick announcements before we wrap up for the night. So Ryan and I are getting together in person.
Yes.
This is a thing. We're getting together in person here soon, a couple of weeks, to over some beers, because as one does. And we're going to get together, and we're spending some time planning out next steps for the Kessel Chat. We've got a lot of really fun plans, from evergreen videos to a variety of other things, but we're going to be spending a lot of time prepping and getting ready for what we want to be doing next. We really want to put more of an investment in other types of content on the site, things for all of you to know and love. So if you would do us a favor and go onto any of our videos on the Kessel Chat YouTube channel, or hit us up on Twitter, or wherever you want to get us, and drop a note, send us a tweet, send us a direct message, whatever you want to do, find us on social media, either one of us, and let us know what things you would love to see from the Kessel Chat. Types of content, stories that we want to talk about, characters, anything like that you're interested in. We want to hear all your input as we kind of frame out what we want to be doing next with this show.
Yes, and if you're interested in one of the first long form episodes, and it's a standalone that I'm producing, is how Star Wars can avoid Star Trek's mistakes. And it's all around how I am so disappointed in all of this Star Trek television that's coming out. Oh my gosh! If anybody's watching season 2 of Picard, you know what I'm talking about. And how Star Wars can avoid some of those traps, and that includes allowing an actor who might be protective of a character making choices for that character. Sometimes it's better for the writers or a visionary to say, no, this is what this character needs to be. That's not, I'm all about collaborative efforts, but yeah. So if you're interested in that as a long form piece of content, please let us know. Please leave comments. But even if there were episodes that you liked in the past, I'm very interested in finding ways that we can build on some of those conversations. So let us know whether it's content, guests, or topics that you're interested in. We're eager in kind of building our storyboard of both short form content and long form content.
Absolutely. And with that, we're going to bounce for tonight. Have a wonderful evening, everybody. We'll talk to you really soon.
Right on.